Hi folks, it's Jeff from J. Allen Pipes. I'm here today to talk to you about my new J. Allen design tools. For a lot of years there have been a lot of pipe makers who have wanted to use tools like this but didn't know where to get them. I've got two products I want to talk about today. One is my spoon bit, which is used for Danish style freehand drilling, and the other is a military mount kit for making the mortise and the brass ring that supports the mortise for military mount stems. Let's take a look at the items that I've got available. The second tool that I have for you is a military mount cutting kit. It comes in three pieces. First is the spoon bit used to make the tapered mortise for a military mount setup. The second is a brass tube, and from this you can size and buy your own brass tube for making future military mounts. And also, this is your cutting tool, and I'll show you how to do that later. And the third piece is a Delrin plug. This fits into the mortise that you've drilled with the spoon bit and slides easily into the brass tube, and it's used as a guide to make the hole for the brass ring that you will use to reinforce the mortise. The brass tube that you receive with your military mount kit is just a length like this. That'll give you an example to take some measurements from to order your own brass tubing. You can also use it to make the cutting tool that's required for cutting the brass ring that will be a reinforcement for the military mount hole. You can see here I've drawn 4 teeth on this brass tube, and we're going to use our Fordham with a cutoff tool to cut those teeth. And at the end, your tool will look like this. So the first thing that you need to do when you are doing Danish style drilling is, after you have shaped the pipe, you need to draw these guidelines on the pipe. The first line that you will draw is this center line that will run all the way around the pipe. The second thing you need to do is draw your center lines on the end of the shank and on the top of the bowl. Then you find the center of your bowl, or the direction that you would like your tobacco chamber to travel, and you extend that line from the center of the top all the way down until it reaches the bottom where you've drawn your center line there. Do the same for your mortise line here. And then the final line that you will draw, you'll go in about where you expect your draft hole to meet the bottom of your mortise. You want it to be as close to center as possible. And then you will draw that line all the way to the point on the bottom of the bowl where you would like the chamber and the draft hole to meet, and extend that line all the way around. After we do that, then we take 3 little blocks of briar and we're going to super glue them on those spots. Now both of the pipes have had the blocks glued on. I use a little bit of spray accelerant to speed up the drying of the super glue, and then I've sanded the blocks so that the lines can be as close to perpendicular to these lines here as possible, to make it a little easier to get your end point to stick on the to stick on the blocks when you need to drill it. Then I've extended the drawing lines to each point. When hand drilling a pipe, the first thing that you need is a pin like this that has been blunted on one side and sharpened on the other. This pin will go in the tailstock and we'll use to center the pipe on the blocks that we have glued to the briar. The other thing when drilling a military mortise is that we are going to need a drill bit, preferably a brad point drill bit, that is slightly smaller than the size of mortise hole that we will be drilling, and this will be a pilot. Take the pin and chuck it into the tailstock with the pointy side out. And we will locate it on the point created on our stummel for our mortise line, which is right here. This will be used to center and advance the stummel onto the drill bit. And we'll use that by locking the tailstock. We'll lock the tailstock down and advance it with the crank on the quill. With the lathe turning at about 300 RPM, or as fast as you are comfortable drilling, we'll drill the mortise pilot hole. Now we will feed the military mount mortise cutter into the pilot hole that we've just drilled. You can feel it just bottom out. Next, with the Delrin guide plug inserted into the mortise and the brass cutter inserted into the headstock, we're going to slowly, at about 100 RPM, cut the slot to insert the brass reinforcement ring into the face of the shank. Go very slowly with this. The teeth will cut, but don't force it. And you want to go to a depth of about 1/8 of an inch. If you notice too much friction, do a little problem solving and figure out how to reduce that friction, because you don't want to burn the hole and expand it, nor do you want to risk breaking off the inner ring between the brass slot and the mortise wall. The final step in the military mount process, we're going to need a brass length that has been cut off to the correct depth for the hole that we have created and sanded on the outside to 60 or 80 grit, super glue, and super glue accelerator. We'll place super glue into the slot, making sure that all of the surfaces are covered, but not into the mortise hole itself. Next, we'll put the brass ring in the hole and as quickly as possible flip it over and press down on a flat surface, making sure that the pipe remains with the mortise vertical. Spray the bottom with spray adhesive to be sure that none of the glue that is squeezed out goes into the mortise itself. So to finish the military mount process, we of course need to sand down the brass ring. When you're sanding this, sand with your 36 grit sanding disc as you would normally sand the briar, but you need to be sure that you keep it cool throughout the process, so don't be afraid to spray it with water and let it cool down. If you let it get too hot, it will burn the briar, weaken the glue, and possibly come out or expand your mortise and distort the shape of it. To turn the tenon that you will fit to this, you'll need to set the compound on your lathe to about 1.5 degrees. The compounds on the lathes that pipe makers generally use are notoriously inaccurate, so what you're going to need to do is make adjustments until you get a good fit. And you use that compound to cut the shape of the tapered shape of the tenon to fit inside this mortise. And that's about all I have to say about the military mount kit. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, please be sure to ask in the comments. I'll do my very best to answer any questions that are asked there. Thanks again for watching, and tune in next time.